Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on this webinar. This is Andy Wisher, Chief Product Officer at Agiloft. It's been only 2 months since I was last on the weekly Agiloft webinar for the launch of the Agiloft 2021 spring release. I'm so happy to be back here again to share with you another super exciting product launch. Today, we are announcing the availability of the Agiloft Sourcing and Supplier Information Management solution. It's an add-on for the Agiloft CLM platform that reduces source-to-contract cycle times and automates supplier onboarding and ongoing compliance. But before we reveal all, let me just give you a quick overview of the format of today's webinar. The webinar is scheduled to run for 45 minutes in total. We'll be presenting for around 35 minutes, and then we'll move into a Q&A section. So please use the Q&A feature in the Zoom webinar to submit your questions to us, and we will answer as many of them as possible at the end. Alongside me today is my colleague, Sanket Bagchi. Sanket is a platform solutions manager here at Agiloft and part of the team that builds our solutions and add-on modules on the Agiloft no-code platform. And Sanket will be providing you with a walkthrough of the new sourcing and supplier information management solution. For those of you that are new to Agiloft, let me just give you a quick recap on some recent Agiloft highlights and accomplishments. The first is that just last week, Gartner again named Agiloft as a leader in the 2021 Magic Quadrant for Contract Lifecycle Management. Spend Matters named Agiloft as a value leader in their 2021 CLM solution map. And then just recently, we won 2 awards for our AI core solution, the Big Innovation Award and the Silver Stevie. And that's for the platform capability that powers our contract analysis and risk scoring functionality in our CLM solution. Again, for those that are perhaps new to Agiloft, our CLM solution is built on a core foundation of platform capabilities like our no-code data management, our AI core. On top of those are our productivity integrations and our enterprise integrations. And it's this platform that the sourcing and supplier information management solution is built on too. And this is really important. It means users get a unified user experience for their sourcing events, for their supplier profiles, and for their contracts too. Let's just take a quick sneak peek. So this is all of the in-flight sourcing events on the new sourcing module. Same UI, same navigation, same search as the CLM solution. And users can quickly switch to CLM from the menu in the top right. So clicking on that menu, they can select contract management and they're switching into their dashboard of in-flight contracts as well. We'll see more of this in a moment from Sanket. But first, let me address perhaps one of the questions that you may have, which is, why have we made this push upstream on the buy side from CLM into sourcing and supplier information management? I think to answer this, it's necessary to look at the bigger picture of where contracting sits in the enterprise. And that bigger picture is that contracts and CLM are at the center of commerce. There is a source to pay business process on the buy side. There's a lead to cash vector on the sell side. And there's also the legal operations function to consider too. Source to pay involves spend analytics, the sourcing, the contracts, supplier performance management, and invoicing, with supplier information management happening both pre and post contract. On the lead to cash, it's opportunity management through RFX response or proposal response, configure price quote, contracts, revenue management, and then invoicing and payment. And an example legal ops flow is legal work requests, matter management, contracts, and e-billing. At Agilloft, we've focused on the events on the buy side, leading to the contracting process and also leading from the contract process. We started to dig into understanding some of the challenges that procurement and sourcing professionals are experiencing in these areas on the source to pay business process. And we found that these professionals are facing an ever-growing challenges and demands. They're under pressure to consolidate the number of suppliers they work with, to reduce complexity and gain greater buying power. There's also the pressure to perform. Existing sourcing processes are often complex and manual. Getting all of the stakeholders lined up on a sourcing project can take great effort, and bottlenecks in the process result in slipped deadlines. Sourcing teams are also under pressure to optimize spend. Sometimes that means trawling through contracts to uncover volume discount opportunities. Sourcing teams are also under pressure to do their detailed due diligence to help stakeholders select the right supplier, not just the one that can deliver on the goods or services, but also one that meets the ever-changing compliance requirements of them, the buyer. The fifth point is that siloed data in multiple systems often makes it difficult to optimize that sourcing and contracting process. Different user experiences can make it difficult for procurement and sourcing professionals to optimize that larger source to contract process. The Agilloft sourcing and supplier information management solution is designed to reduce and eliminate some of these complexities. And our solution reduces cycle times from source to contract, automates supplier onboarding and ongoing compliance, and crucially, and I think this is really important, as an add-on solution built on the same unique no-code platform as our contracting solution, that means no more data silos and a unified user experience across sourcing and contracting. Let's see it in action. Let's turn over now to Sanket, who's going to walk you through a demonstration of the solution. Sanket.
Thank you, Andy. Now, before we jump into the demonstration, there are really two parts to this add-on, and both of them have their own workflow and lifecycle. So as part of the demonstration, we are going to take a look at them individually. Let's start with the first one, which is sourcing. Now, this part of the add-on can help manage your entire lifecycle, and we're going to take a look at how, starting from somebody requesting a new sourcing event to all the activities that a sourcing manager would perform, the roles of approvers and evaluation committee members. We'll also take a look at what your suppliers will see when they log into the supplier portal. And finally, we'll take a look at how sourcing ties into your existing contract workflow. Let's start with the first step. In this window, I'm logged in as a sourcing event requester. This is a role you could give anyone who you want to be able to create or request new sourcing events. From here, I click New, and I'm going to quickly fill in information from my clipboard. For this example, let's create a request for proposal. Then I fill in a purpose, a scope of work, and any additional requirements. And we fill in the contract start date and an end date, and the total value of the contract, of the expected contract. As the request, that's pretty much all I do. And I click submit for review. When I do that, it's going to send out a notification to the team of sourcing event managers who will then take it forward. So in this window, I'm now logged in as a sourcing manager. Now, a sourcing manager performs a lot of activities. And in the interest of time, let's skip ahead to an event which I've already reviewed. It contains the same information, except that I've already performed some of the activities required. Now, one of the first things I'll do as the sourcing manager is review the information submitted by the requester. And if there are any issues, I can make corrections to it. Then based on that information, I decide whether this event should be a public event or an invitation only. And invitation only means that only the suppliers who we invite to respond will be able to respond to it. Down here, I can decide if the estimated value needs to be broken down into a budget. If so, I can go to the budget tab and break it down by fiscal year and cost center and the amount for each year. At the bottom, I can fill in the tentative schedule of events and fill in the dates which are necessary for this sourcing event. An important date here, for example, is the date and time by when all responses should be in. Also note we have a bidding type here. A closed bidding type means suppliers can only respond and see their own bid amount. An open bidding event means any supplier who is responding will be able to see the responses of all other suppliers. The next thing I would do is set up an evaluation committee. So here you can see I have selected 3 people who will be evaluating the responses, and there's 1 person who will be responsible for approving the supplier. Down here, we decide how we are going to score the suppliers. The first option, and we have 3 options here. The first option is to not have any criteria at all. For example, if the selection is going to be based entirely on the cost, we can select skip criteria. On the second option is if the organization has a scoring template, for example, in a spreadsheet, which I want to upload, I can do that here. The third option, and what I've done here, is to create the criteria directly in Agiloft. And that makes it a lot easier to compare the responses and the evaluation once you have it. Once I've done that, the next thing I do is create a sourcing package. And to create a sourcing package, I start by creating sourcing documents using templates. So over here, I have 2 templates, for example, which I can click this button to generate the documents from them. I can also attach a blank contract document. For this demonstration, I've already done that part. So these 2 are the sourcing documents I created using templates. And this is a blank contract document, which could give the supplier an idea of the contract they will be signing eventually. I could merge multiple documents into one sourcing package. For that, I just say which ones I want to merge. I click this button, and in just a moment, we'll see we have a sourcing package, which is publicly available. That simply means that suppliers will be able to see this package. I can also make the contract document publicly available and save that. Now, finally, before I post it or before I invite anyone to respond to it, the last thing I do is send it out for approvals. So I come to the approval tab, and you might be familiar with this if you've worked with contracts. We select an approval workflow and create those approvals. We select the people who would be approving them, and we click launch approval. And what that does is it initiates the approval workflow where each approver in their own turn will get a notification, and they will be able to come in, view this sourcing event, ask any questions about it, or ask for any changes to it, or if they're satisfied with it, they'll be able to approve it. Now, in the interest of time, once again, let's skip ahead to a sourcing event which has already been approved. Now, once again, the information is the same. The only difference is if we come to approvals, all the approvals have been completed. Now, finally, before I post it, I do have the option to invite specific suppliers. If I come to supply invitation, I can select the suppliers I want to invite, the name of the contact, and I can add a custom message for them and invite. In this example, because it's an open sourcing event, which will be publicly available anyway, I'll just go ahead and click post. Now, before we move on to the next step, I just want to summarize everything we did as a sourcing manager because we performed quite a number of steps. So as the manager, we were responsible for, first of all, reviewing it, and then we created a budget, we created a sourcing package, we determined the type of bidding, whether it's going to be public or invitation only, open or closed. We formed an evaluation committee and decided the evaluation criteria. We are responsible for approvals, and we have the option of inviting specific suppliers. Now let's look at what a supplier would see. In this window, I'm logged in as a supplier to the supplier portal. The supplier portal is part of this add-on. I can see I have quite a few options here. For now, we are going to skip ahead and look at the public sourcing events. So as you can see, there's currently only one, which is the one that we just posted. I can open that up and look at the various details. I can go to the attachments and look at the documents which have been made available to me. Based on these, if I'm interested, I would go ahead and click I'm interested. And what that will do is open up a vendor response form. Now, from here, if I still have any additional questions, I do have the option of going ahead and asking them over here. And what that will do is initiate a conversation with the sourcing event manager. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and enter an amount, upload any files which are required, and let's submit. Now, this sourcing event will be open and visible to various suppliers till the date you mentioned in your schedule of events. On that date, what will happen is the sourcing event will close and the evaluation committee will be notified, and each evaluator will be able to come in and rate the suppliers who have responded. In our interest of time, let's skip ahead to one which has already closed. So this one, again, it has the same information except suppliers have already responded to it, and the evaluation committee has already come in and scored them. So if we go here, we can see that the two suppliers responded. Let's go into the first one. And if we look at the scoring, we can see here we have received 3 evaluations. Here's an average score and some additional parameters. If you wanted more details about the score, we can go into any one of these and see how they scored on each parameter or each criteria, and any notes that might have been provided by the evaluators. Now, the supplier clearly has met all our criteria, so we can say criteria has been met. If we look at the second supplier, then clearly they have a low score, but more importantly, we see here that they have failed in one criteria. And if it is important to us that every criteria should have been met, then this supplier has failed and we can say reject. So in this example, we are left with only one supplier. So that's the supplier we can recommend an award to. Now, finally, before we actually award a contract to the supplier, we do need one more round of approvals. So again, it's the same process where we select an approval workflow and we create approvals. Now, once we have decided the people who will be approving, we can go ahead and launch the process. And once again, these approvers will be notified. They'll be able to come in, review the details, and approve or reject. So let's skip ahead to one which has already been approved, which is this one. So down here, once the approvers have approved this particular supplier, the only thing that remains for us to do is to come down here. We can see the selected supplier and the type of contract we'll be creating with them. The last thing we do as a sourcing manager is to just click create contract. And with just that one click, it converts it into a draft contract and initiates your standard contract lifecycle. So if you were to go into the contract table, we can see that there's now a new contract in draft. The contract management team will now be notified of this and they will take it ahead from here. And that is the entire sourcing lifecycle. Next, we look at supply information management. And this really cycle centers around the idea of supplier profiles. Supplier profiles are where we collect all the information of suppliers, and it ties back into the company record. And there are really three ways to create a new supplier profile. The first way is self-registration. For example, if you have a link on your website which suppliers can click and they can sign up to be suppliers for your company. The other way is if you're entering into a contract with a supplier for the first time, you can ask them to submit their profile before you can sign the contract. And the third way is, let's say you are posting a new sourcing event publicly, you can require that any new suppliers who you have never engaged with, they submit their supplier profile before they can submit a response. Once you receive a supplier profile, a supplier manager could ask for more information. But importantly, they can send out surveys. So for example, surveys on information security or ethics and compliance, anything of that sort. And if you want these surveys to be recurring every certain number of months or years, you could do that. So if you need an InfoSec survey every 2 years, you could set it to automatically notify the vendor supplier every 2 years. Supply information management is also tied in with approvals. So once you receive a profile and once you have all the information you need, you can send it out to a team of approvers who can review it before you can enter into contracts with the supplier. And finally, it's not just a one-time thing where they submit information and you approve it and it's done. There's also a modification workflow built right in where anytime there's a change, the supplier could come in and enter those changes themselves. So let's start with, and for this demonstration, let's look at the self-registration example. In this window, this is an example website where there's a link which suppliers can click to sign up. So let's say I'm a supplier. I click this button. The first thing I need to do is create an account. I'm going to quickly fill in this form. I just enter my email I create my own login and password and I click save. Now that is going to send me an email with a link to submit further details. So let me go ahead and click a link which I've received previously. When I click that link, it brings me to the supplier profile of the kid, where I fill in standard information such as the goods and services supplied by my company and how big the company is, tax information, location, and so on. So let's pick a few goods and services here. Let's say we provide cleaning services, so we search for that, select all of these, and import. I'm going to use quick fill on these. When it comes to locations, so you have the option to enter 2 locations. So first could be a headquarters, and then you could also enter a separate billing location. Let's enter the country here and pick a state. Now down here, we enter any stakeholders for the company. So any board members, executives, and so on. I'm going to quickly add this one as an example. Below that, we have the option to enter related companies. So again, any parent, subsidiaries, or partner companies can be entered here. So let's quickly add this one. And any additional notes you might want to supply can be added here. Any files that you need to attach can be uploaded here. And once you're done, you click submit. Now that sends a notification to the team of supplier managers. Here, I'm logged in as a supplier manager. From my dashboard, I can see all the supplier profiles which are pending review. I'm going to go into one which was previously submitted. Now, again, one of the things I'll do is review the information which has been submitted, but I'll also make sure this is not a related company, and there's no conflict of interest. If it is, I can go ahead and reject it. The other thing I can do is make sure it's not something that already exists in our database. Maybe it's under a different name or misspelling or something. Once I'm satisfied it's not, I go ahead and review the rest of the information. If I have any additional questions for this, I can go ahead and add a note to the supplier. So for example, they haven't submitted a website URL, so we can ask them about it. Doing that is going to initiate a back and forth with the supplier. If I need to send out surveys, I can come to the surveys tab, pick the kind of surveys I want them to fill out, and generate them. And again, it sends out a notification to the supplier contact with the surveys, and they'll have to fill it out. And finally, once I'm satisfied with the information I have received, I can go ahead and initiate an approval lifecycle where I select an approval workflow, I create the approvals, and select the people who will be approving and launch when I'm ready. And once the supplier has been approved, after that, we can go ahead and sign contracts with that supplier. But like I said previously, that is not the end of it. So let's say it's been a few months and there are some changes to the company's details. So as a supplier contact, I could come in back to the supplier portal and view profiles. And I have the option to request changes. Let's say there are some new board members, or let's say there's a new parent company who's taken us over, or a new subsidiary that we have created. So we can come in here, change any of these details and update it. And once we have done that, we come down here and see what we've changed. So for example, if we were to add a new company, we can say add a new subsidiary and submit. And what that will do is, once again, it will send it back to the supply manager, who will once again review the changes, get an approval done, and once it is approved, anything which was changed, it's going to go back into the original company record and update those details in the company. And that is the entire supply information management lifecycle. From here, let me hand you over back to Andy. Thank you.
Thanks, Sankey. I'm sure the audience will agree that this is a comprehensive set of features and functionality across the source to contract process. I particularly love the simplicity of the supplier portal experience, the robustness of those out-of-the-box approval processes, but I think most of all, I love that one-click create contract as soon as the award is granted to the winning supplier. Just to recap on what we've seen here, the Agilloft sourcing and supplier information management solution enables sourcing professionals to, firstly, improve decision-making, centralizing and streamlining the source-to-contract process. To achieve this, the solution supports that ability to approve and promote sourcing events by inviting suppliers to submit proposals, collaborate, collect, and respond to supplier questions with full transparency for the team, allowing stakeholders to appraise, score, and compare suppliers while collaborating with the team, managing approvals, and reporting back, all online. And then that conversion of an award into a contract, synchronizing the data into the contract, using approved contract language, all with the click of a button. The second point is that we've seen how the solution saves time and automates supplier information management, allowing suppliers to register and provide data and documents through the supplier portal, gathering responses to those custom questionnaires and pre-qualifying, approving, and notifying suppliers to update things like their insurance certificates or their tax and licensing documentation, using those recurring surveys. And thirdly, we've seen how users can tap into the Agilloft unified source-to-contract CLM platform to quickly identify existing suppliers, gain visibility into supplier relationships and contracts across geographies and departments and business units, to turn opportunities into real savings for the organization, and to provide that unified user experience across sourcing and contracting activities. And I think the final point that I would make is this. The demonstration that Sankey provided today is configurable, just like our CLM solution is configurable. And that means the solution can be extended and configured through the Agilloft no-code capabilities to ensure the solution precisely fits your needs today, but also tomorrow as well. That completes the main part of today's presentation. I hope you've valued the content that we presented and the demonstration. Let's turn to the questions that you've submitted through that Q&A button in the Zoom webinar panel. Great. So, Sankey, I think this first question that I've got here is for you. And it's, can we use the sourcing part without the supplier portal?
All right. Yeah, absolutely. So, like I started off in my demonstration, these are both, they both have their own workflows and lifecycle. So if your organization only needs one of these two add-ons, you can use just one part of it. The add-on itself is one cohesive part, but in terms of functionality, you can choose to use a part of it and not the other part of it.
Great. The next question we've got here, I'm an existing customer. How do I get this? We love to hear questions like that. So we have a process for assessing the approach with our implementation team and synchronizing the modules into your KB. So existing customers should connect with their account executive or customer success manager to explore that. Next question. Can we get just the sourcing part or just the SIM part? The supplier information management part. Sanket, do you want to just answer that one?
Yes. So all of these things like sourcing, supply information management, the supplier portal, staying true to the AgileLoft no-code platform, all of these are very customizable and very easily changeable for your use cases and your organization's workflow. So if there's a part of it that is not for you, or if it doesn't work for you and you want to change it, you can basically pick and choose which parts you want, which parts you don't want, which parts you want to change, and so on.
Great. Thanks, Sanket. There's another question that came in early on. Does AgileLoft integrate with Workday? Sanket, do you want to pick that one up as well?
Sure, absolutely. There are a couple of ways to do that. In general, AgileLoft provides you APIs to connect with a host of services. For Workday, one of the ways you could do that directly is to use Boomi. Boomi has connectors for both AgileLoft and Workday, and you could use that as a middleware. If you don't want to do that, you of course have the option to directly use AgileLoft's API and connect to Workday directly as well.
Perfect. Now we get into some questions that are very specific around the sourcing and supplier information management module. This is a great question. It's around consensus. So we saw in the demonstration multiple evaluators evaluating the submissions from the suppliers. So talk about consensus, Sanket. Is this an automatic process, or are the evaluators or the sourcing manager determining that consensus?
Sure, yeah. So the idea is that all the evaluators could first start off and perform their own individual evaluations, and then they could all get together, or there could be one lead evaluator who could review all of these and create a consensus evaluation. Now, it's not mandatory to create a consensus evaluation, just as it is not mandatory to create individual as well. If you want to just use the individual responses, you could do that. The system does provide you average scores for the individual responses, and the manager could use that average to determine which suppliers to go with. And again, this is one of those things that can be customized. So if you want your consensus score to follow a certain formula, or you want some kind of automation around it, if you want a report which summarizes all the individual responses and which gives you all the comments in one document, it's very easily doable for your implementation.
Great. And Sanket, there was a follow-up to that question, and it's the question is, does it merge the evaluators' comments together?
Right. So yeah, again, out of the box, it doesn't do that because we're expecting you to create consensus evaluations. But it's a very simple thing to do if you'd like to automatically just merge all comments into one place where you can read them.
Great. Maybe I'll have a go at this next one. So the context is the generation of that draft contract. So after award has been granted to the supplier, and we're initiating the creation of the contract. The question is, will it take the deliverables from the sourcing document into the contract? So some of the information carries over from that sourcing event and the responses into the contract. But again, like Sanket mentioned previously. If there are specific other things that you want to carry into the contract, that can be catered for as part of your implementation. Here's another question. Is there a Q&A possibility to allow bidders to ask questions on specific documents, including managing which questions are answered publicly to all bidders and which ones are answered privately? And we saw a little bit of that during the demonstration. Sanket, do you want to just answer that one?
Sure, absolutely. So Q&A is built right in. Once your suppliers say they're interested, they have the option of asking questions, which get routed to your internal management team, supplier management team, or sourcing management team. And from there can be a back and forth conversation. And anytime you're responding to a question, you do have the option of saying you want to make the answer public, and that effectively becomes an FAQ, and any other supplier can also read that answer.
Great. Another question here, is there a way of updating published documents?
Sure, absolutely. So once you attach a document and publish it a couple of ways, you could always update the version. So version control is built right in, as you might be familiar with if you're using contracts. And as you saw, we make documents public when we want suppliers to see them. So the other way is to just hide the document, make it internal, upload a new document and make that public. Yeah.
Great. Is there a way for bidders to submit draft documents and for the customer to send feedback, like coaching on their initial submission?
Yeah, so this is another one of those things, which it's not out of the box, it's not in the base system, but again, it's very easily implemented for your workflow, as part of your workflow. So if you want to allow suppliers to have multiple rounds of document submission, you could do that, absolutely.
Great. Here's a fantastic question that I really like. Is there an ability to attach an AML or KYC in the supplier information management function? So doing that sort of risk analysis as you're onboarding suppliers. So great question. That supplier risk management is a natural extension to supplier information management, and it is one of the areas that we are keen to explore beyond this initial release of supplier information management. Now, there would be ways within the Agilloft platform, given the flexibility in the no-code, to integrate with those types of external sources, and we have done that. But we want to also be able to bring this type of functionality into the core module as well. Okay, I think there was one more. Let me just check. Can the sourcing module have an RFX template library attached? So we certainly saw during your demonstration, Sanket, the generation of the RFX package coming from the Agilloft print templates. I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about that process and how that relates to a sort of template library of content.
Sure, yes. So very similar to what you might be familiar with again in contracts is you can create sort of document templates. And these templates are basically your base versions of whatever RFP, RFIs you want to publish. And when you create these sourcing documents in the system, it's going to take all the information you have filled in terms of your scope, in terms of your considerations, or any other information that you have entered, and it'll put that into the document for you. So yeah, that is essentially, you have an option to generate these documents automatically and not have to do anything. Just click a button, publish them for your suppliers to see.
Great. Excellent, Sankey. And that was the last question. And I'm looking at the clock, and it looks like we're right on schedule. So, firstly, thank you, Sankey, for a fantastic demonstration. I'm confident the audience would have got a lot out of that walkthrough of the new sourcing and supplier information management solution. Thank you to everyone that's joined the webinar today. The recording of the webinar will be up on our website within the next 24 to 48 hours. I know that some people had to leave at the bottom of the hour. So thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you again on the Agiloft webinars. Thank you.